Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Emotionally Intelligent You Grief Support Session with Dr. Princess Millens. I'm so glad that you're here today for another Self Care Saturday. Um, I really can't believe it's been a whole month. These months are just flying by, right? We're already almost in November. But I've not seen you since September, so I hope everything has been going well. I know it's been some difficulties and some losses throughout the last few weeks, but still, I really hope that you have been pushing and praying, and that God is answering every prayer. So I thank you for being here, and I'm just excited to be here today again. So, whether you're the first time joining us here at the grief support session, or if this is another time that you've joined, I always call this place a safe place that we can step into this place of grace and where we can tell the truth about our pain, right? Truth about the pain, and then trust God to meet us in the pain. That's what we want to do. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Princess Millens. I'm a certified grief coach, Christian counselor, resilience educator, and emotional wellness advocate. And so, I walked through some deep, deep, deep valleys of grief myself and loss. But I've learned that healing is not really about getting over it. It's not about getting over it. It's about learning to live with it while holding on to hope. And that's what we have. We have hope. And as long as we have hope, we can hold on. So that's what it has taught me. So today, really, I want to talk to you about something that I've kind of been pondering, well, off and on, but some things that I kind of even saw in my own grief journey that kind of sneaks into every healing journey, really. It kind of sneaks in there. It's really subtle. And it's the comparison trap. The comparison trap. So the comparison trap, it says um, you should be farther along. It says, look how strong she is and he is, and looking at everybody else. Why can't I be like that? The comparison trap, even when we're grieving, right? So we're going to unpack some of this stuff. We are going to, see where those voices are coming from and, why do they hinder our healing? And then some things that we need to do to kind of overcome this thing called comparison trap when we're going through grief and loss. So by the end of this session, I hope that you'll have the language to um, for your own pace, your own space, the piece about your process because it's individual, and some tools that you can help you keep your eyes on the prize. Okay, help you keep your eyes on your healing journey, on God Himself, and not everybody else. Okay, so um, this comparison trap is really subtle. I really didn't understand, I guess, in the beginning and really know how subtle this thing is, right? It's very subtle. It's a subtle type of weight though. It kind of drags you down, and I'm gonna explain why. Comparison, it kind of hides. It hides in small thoughts. So it comes up in small thoughts that we have, and it hides there. And it kind of seem harmless, right? So we'll say things like this. We'll say, you know, um, they seem to be okay. Why am I still crying? Why am I still having a hard time? Um, I should be stronger by now. These thoughts that we have, right? Other people move on so fast, and what's wrong with me? Why am I still here? Why am I still stuck? So those whispers and those things that we think, um, it grows into shame. It grows into a place where I feel like I should be farther along, and I'm not, and I'm ashamed that I'm not. Okay, this is what happens to a lot of people, right? But grief was never meant to be a race. And this is why this thing can come up really subtly, because we think we're not racing, but these kind of thoughts that we have, it really indicates that we're in a race, that we want to be at the same pace and the same speed as we see other people, right? Now, each relationship that we have is unique, and every loss will be too, right? But God created us. He created us with individual hearts, personalities, stories, and all this kind of stuff, so that no two healing journeys are the same. No, none of us are the same. So our journeys and our path will not be the same. Um, Comparison steals compassion. Just like when we're comparing ourselves with business success, right? This company over here or this business over here seems to be more successful than mine. Or relationships. This marriage over here seems to be more loving than mine. This person seems to be making more money than me. So the comparison steals compassion from yourself, even in grief, because we're saying these things. I should be further along. I'm looking at them. They seem to be strong. They seem to be okay. Why am I still over here crying? Why am I still, it's been 10 years. Um, but we have all different hearts. We have all different personalities. God made us differently, right? Uh, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? But if our design is unique, if every person is different, we are crafted and created individuals, you know, why would we ever think that our recovery and our healing would be the same? So if we are individuals, right? We are uniquely created, then our recovery from a loss is going to be unique as well. And that's why it's very dangerous to get into this comparison trap, because it steals your compassion from yourself. Um, so instead of asking, right, what do I need right now? We start asking things like, what's wrong with me? You're not asking yourself to take care of yourself. You're asking questions so that you can further get into that comparison. That in the comparison, it keeps the wound open. It keeps the wound open. So we're going to replace that thing with gentleness, right? We're going to replace it with gentleness and the things that we need. We're going to say quietly to ourselves, my grief gets to be mine. And we see a lot of this, I believe, the closer the relationship is, um, the more comparison we have, especially in families. So if my brother, my children, my cousins, and we all lose somebody in the family, and then I look over here, my cousin seems like they handle it better than me, you know, and my daughters seem to be handling it better. I'm looking at all of this comparison, and it's pulling me into a slump, because I'm just comparing my grief journey to their grief journey. It happens all the time in families. And sometimes it happens in families so much so that some people might be vocal about it. You know, they'll actually say, some family members will actually say, you should be over it by now. And so you're thinking, I should be over it by now. But that further puts pressure on you. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Puts pressure on you to try to speed up what you can't help. You can't help it because you're grieving. But you can make those moves to be better and to walk better in it. So I want you to think about this, your journal question today. One of them. Think about what what is one comparison? Because I gave you some. What's one comparison thought that has lingered with you lately or before or whatever? What comparison thought have you thought about, have come to your mind? You know, if you're journaling right now, I want you to write beneath it, I want you to write a truth that sets you free. In other words, like the lie is, I should be over it by now. But the truth is, healing takes time, and God is patient with me, and I heal at my own pace. That's the truth. So I believe that when we identify what the comparison, what are we saying to ourselves to compare ourselves to somebody else's journey, right? What are we saying? And now, since I know what it is, I've acknowledged it and I've identified it, now I can put truth to it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. So let me dig a little bit deeper here, because I think said something about, there's pressure, even when you're in families, the closer the relationship is, the more comparison that we feel. So even if it's a group of friends, right? And we all lose somebody that we was friends with or something like that, it's still the same thing, because we're still comparing my journey and her journey and their journey and all this kind of stuff, right? The closer we are, the more we compare. And sometimes, we just compare just to compare, right? But it kind of maximizes when you're really close to that person. And this is what I'm going to say about pressure. Sometimes we have pressure. The reason why, sometimes the comparison can be self-imposed. It can be self-imposed. And then sometimes it is pressured. It's pressured. It's that family member that says, you ain't over it by now. You know, you got divorced, or you had to end a relationship badly, right? You're not over him by now. You still crying. Now I was married for 14 years, 20-year relationship, 14-year marriage. However, right, we have people out here, your family members, our family members, that will say, you ain't over it by now. And it's like been 6 months. So sometimes the social pressure or the family pressure, right, it silences us, it shames us, right? Because sometimes we don't compare intentionally. Sometimes we pushed into it by pressure. We're pushed into it. Our family always say, be strong for everybody else. Have you ever heard that? So sometimes we don't have to say it. I've said it before. I remember when I lost my son, I felt like, I told myself, be strong for everybody else. Sometimes family would do that too. So sometimes it's self-imposed, and sometimes it's pressure by way of somebody else saying something to pressure you into speeding up that healing process. It's a comparison. Church, when you at church, if you have the church family, right? Um, they might say something like, um, God wouldn't want you to be sad, you know, things like that. Social media. Yeah, I want to say social media too. Um, it shows smiling faces all of the time while you are barely getting out of bed. You scrolling on your social media, and they smiling, they taking pictures, taking selfies with their families, all of this kind of stuff, and you're barely getting out of bed. These are the pressures that we face to pull us deeper into the comparison trap. And that pressure, it breeds silence. We start silencing our voice at that time. But silence is where the shame grows. Anytime we feel like we have to suppress what we really feel, right? That silence is where shame grows. Now you're shamed because you're thinking about, well, I should be over it by now. Well, who's to say? Jesus didn't hide his pain. He wept publicly. He didn't rush no tears. He heard that his friend Lazarus was dead, and he wept publicly. And he wasn't by himself. He was surrounded by people. He was surrounded by these people who didn't understand his grief, right? And still he wept. So if the Son of God can do that and grieve out loud, so can we. That's what I know. So we have to normalize and challenge the idea that our tears mean weakness. So because you're crying and you still shed tears and other people don't mean you're weak, don't mean you're wrong, don't mean that you're behind. Tears mean release. I wish really people would get that. Tears means that you're releasing. They say, I still care and I still love. That's what tears say. And so I want you to think about if you ever felt pressured to hide or minimize grief because other people made you feel uncomfortable, or to make yourself feel comfortable, that you felt that you had to hide it, you had to minimize what you were going through, minimize your grief or your expression of grief. I want you to sit in what that made you feel like. What did that make you feel like? So again, if you're journaling, write what did that make you feel like. And um the thing that we want to do is identify, the environments that's bringing us pressure. Like I said, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's social media, you know, sometimes it's other things that brings these pressures. Sometimes it's not self-imposed, it's other people and other things that bring us into this comparison trap. So I want you to identify one environment. So this is the thing gonna help you. Identify one environment that feeds comparison or guilt. One environment. Is it social media? Is your family? Is it something else? Right? Is it relational? Right? Even if it's spiritual, it might be your church people. I'm telling you. So this is what I had to do, and I hope this gives encouragement, right? Is that I had to mute. I had to unfollow on social media. I had to mute. I had to unfollow. I had to create a boundary if it was family or something like that around what I was going to do, what I was able to um be exposed to. Because if it was triggering me to scroll on social media with other people laughing and all this kind of stuff, and I'm barely getting out of bed, and that's not doing it, that's not even motivating me to get out the bed, then I got to silence it. With family, I got to create a boundary. I got to say, well, that's good for you, but I would rather we not talk about that. I'd rather we not talk about, how fast my healing is going. I would appreciate it if you would just check in on me and not try to rush me into my healing. In other words, you do all of these things, create boundaries, mute, unfollow, to protect your peace. You have to protect your peace by any means necessary. By any means necessary. So I want you to identify what the environment is that's pulling you deeper into that comparison trap. Because remember, I said that sometimes it's self imposed. We get these thoughts and we think, oh, we should be farther along. And, why am I still over here crying and all this kind of stuff. But sometimes it's other things and other people, right? That kind of draws us in. It's that social pressure that draws us in. And we're still at the same point as if we self-imposed it. Um, this is what I want to encourage you though. Is what you gotta grieve your way. So remember, I told you the scripture where we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are unique. God created each and every one of us different. And so we have to grieve our way. And so grieving our way gives us a type of freedom, a level of freedom. And that begins with stop trying to explain your process. Yeah. Stop trying to explain your process and just embrace your own unique process. You know, healing is not a straight line, it's layered. So that's why we can't, that's another reason why we can't um, compare because it's not linear. It's not a straight line. You don't go from denial to, you don't go in a straight line. It's like a zigzag. So, um, it's a layer, and we have to peel those layers off. Peel the layers like an onion. Peel the layers. And so maybe we laughed today and felt guilty afterwards. Comparison. Because if we are going from one extreme to the next extreme, that means we having these thoughts that are keep tugging and pushing, pulling and tugging us from one extreme to another sometimes. And a lot of times that is a comparison issue. It's a struggle with the thoughts. You really want to be over here, but you're not over there. So I'm going to pretend I'm over here and then it's not going to last. So I'm going to be back over here. I hope I'm not being being confusing. So maybe we didn't feel, and anything and wonder if anything was wrong, and that's okay. It's not. You're learning how to breathe again. This is what this whole thing is about. You're learning how to breathe again in a different world without the person that you lost, in a different world without the relationship that you lost, in a different world that whatever you lost, whatever the loss was, you're learning how to breathe again. Galatians chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the first part of it, it says, pay careful attention to your own work, and then you will get satisfaction for a job well done. Pay attention to your own work, and then you get satisfaction from a job well done. That's permission straight from the scripture to stay in your own lane of healing. Stay in your lane. Our story is our unique story, and it has our thumbprint, our fingerprint on it. And so timing, our timing, God's grace don't expire, and it'll all happen in in his timing, right? So when we try to rush the process, then there's probably be some things that we miss along the way that would probably make us more strong, make us more viable, make us thriving even more, right? Because really, we don't want to be out here just surviving. We want to thrive in life. We don't just want to survive. We want to thrive, you know? So I want you to reflect on this. Think about Peter when he walked on the water, right? The moment that he looked at others instead of Jesus, he started to sink. So comparison distracts us, or distracts all of us from the one who is holding us up. That's what comparison does. It takes your focus off of your healing and it put it on something else. So I want you to think about, what does it look like to keep your eyes on God instead of others while grieving? What does it look like for you? For me, again, I had to create those boundaries. How I keep my eyes, I create the boundaries. Not necessarily for what people say or how I live my life. When I'm tired and I don't want to engage, I don't have to engage. you know, and it's okay. If I'm having a bad day today, I don't have to answer my phone unless it's a mercy, something like that. But it's only a couple of mercies that worth me answering the phone when I'm really having a bad day. So if it's somebody on my timeline, or what whoever or whatever is on my timeline, that every time I see this, I'm like comparing myself, then guess what I'm gonna do? Mute, unfollow, right? Because you have to protect your peace. Protect your peace at all costs. Yeah. So this is what you can write in your journal, right? Is that I give myself permission to heal at my own pace. I give myself permission to heal at my own pace. My grief is valid and my process matters. Yeah, my process matters. Your process matters. And so I want you to understand that you're not behind. You're not behind. You're not doing this wrong. You're just becoming. You're becoming the new person that you're going to be at the other side of this loss. Because we're not the same people. We're not the same people that we were before the loss. And we're not going to go back there. So we're becoming the new person that we're destined to be. So comparison feeds on shame. It pulls us back. It pulls us to where we feel like we're at square one again, right? But grace, it helps us to grow. When we give ourselves grace, it helps us to grow. So maybe today, you realize that you've been grieving somebody else's way. You've been trying to do it like your mama did it. You trying to do it like your cousins. You trying to do it like your spouse. You trying to do it like your siblings. And you're trying to do it through their timeline and their expectation, right? So today is your invitation to start grieving your own way. Start grieving your own way. Get out of the comparison trap. Because with God permission and peace, we'll go a long way. We'll go farther. We'll be farther along, right? Um, and I think this is my last journal prompt that I'm going to give you today, and then you can write more of it in your quiet time. Is that I want you to consider, what does healing look like for you now? What does healing look like for you now? Without comparison. What does healing look like for you now? Because I believe that we've all done it, y'all. At some point, we've all done it. We've all either had thoughts, on our own, you know, to say, such and such over there, and they seem to be fine. Every time I see them, every time I call them, they laughing, and I'm over here having a hard time. Or social pressures, family pressures, relationship pressures will drag us into that pit. But what does healing look like for you now without the comparison? Without the comparison, what will your process look like? What will your emotions be? How will your emotions grow? Right? As a result of not having to compare yourself to anybody else in your grief journey. Because I'm telling you, what I know is that comparison is still the thief of joy. Comparison, it is, And I think sometimes we don't consider this subtle thing that can kind of creep in to our grieving of comparison. We always think about comparison as it relates to, somebody's business and the cars and the houses that they have and all this kind of stuff, the marriage and all this kind of stuff, right? We compare ourselves materially, relationally, but we don't necessarily think about the comparison that we do with each other, within our families, within our friends, at our church, with grief. So I want you all to get out of that rat race of comparing yourself to somebody else. You know, even with some national and celebrities and things like that, we see, them all the time. And, um, they'll come the next day or something like that, or the next week, and you see them making a public statement and they seem to be doing well. You know what I'm saying? And now you feel like, I wish I was like them. I'm telling you, we do it all the time. Whether we recognize it or not, it's a comparison all of the time. We always have a measuring stick out, trying to see, how do I measure up against somebody else? And even if I don't do this comparison thing, right, in any other area, I do it to myself in grief because it's really subtle, especially if it's a lot of time has passed. You know what I'm saying? Like, my mother passed when I was 35 years old. Okay. So it's been about 20 years. It was 2004. Now, uh, most would say, well, Prince, you should be over it by now. You know what I'm saying? I know you've healed from that. Yeah, I have. But that still does not negate the fact that I still miss my mom. And not just on Mother's Day. It could be a random Tuesday, right? Or something in me just miss her. Not for any particular reason. I didn't look at a TV show. I didn't do nothing, right? But I just be missing my mom, right? And I see that, other people that lost their mom seem like they don't know, they just fine, you know? The comparison of it. But again, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so, as we are uniquely designed and created by God, that our grief journeys are going to be the same thing. All right. So just understand, as I kind of close this self-care Saturday session out, understand that, your grief don't have to match anybody else's. Your unique journey is your unique journey. I want you to release the pressure to perform. The comparison trap, it makes us want to perform like we okay, or like we farther along. We'll start trying to play the role as if we're farther along, in front of other people because we don't want to be shamed and silenced and that we're not. We want people to know and feel like we just okay, right? And so I want you to understand that you're healing in your own time. And the thing that's keeping you together is God's grace. He's the one that's keeping you together. And the community that we've built around us that are solid, that we can kind of walk our journey with here on earth and understand that your story it still matters. You're still, you know, worthy of your grief. You still that person that you need to go through that grief. But I want you to promise yourself that you will not compare. You will not compare with anyone your grief journey, but you're going to complete the journey that God has for you. That's the declaration today, that you're not going to compare and that you are going to complete the journey that God has for you, right? So I hope that this session has been uh, good for you, that you have learned something, that maybe you have written something, you have journaled something, that maybe a aha moment. So I want you to drop in the WhatsApp chat if you have access to that. Drop at the end of this video because I'll put it up on YouTube as well. Um, and any questions that you have, I'll make sure that I answer those. And I want you to tell me one takeaway that you'll carry on to this week and to the next time that we see each other, right? And I want to encourage you that you are seen, you are safe, your story matters, your journey matters, right? You are still becoming. You're still becoming. You're becoming the new you. You're becoming the one that is going to carry on the legacy of whoever you lost. And comparison cannot dim what God is restoring in you. I want to encourage you with that. All right. So until next time, I want you to keep your hope, keep your faith. And it was a wonderful time teaching this session today. I'll see you next month on Self Care Saturday for Emotionally Intelligent You grief support session. In the meantime, if you have any questions, make sure you drop those questions in the WhatsApp group or in the Let's Write Life community. Okay. So I love y'all and we'll see you next time. God bless.